In Part 1, I focused on the effects of wage slavery, the changing morals that reflect the workplace. I also made the claim that wage labor is fraud. The reasonable rebuttals I got were mostly, it is voluntary, therefore not slavery. Wage slavery looks voluntary, so I can understand where this argument's coming from. I'll address it from a different angle in this video. So first, some definitions. According to the Free Dictionary, links are below, a slave is one bound in servitude as the property of a person or household. The defining characteristic of slavery is not imprisonment, punishment, duration, or type of work, but ownership. A slave is the property of someone else. This is included because of the less reasonable rebuttals I got to my last video. Then there's wage, payment for labor or service to a worker, especially remunerated on an hourly, daily, or weekly basis, or by the piece. I am addressing the payment for labor aspect of this definition. This is where the problem exists. Let's look at two things, a guitar and a person. A guitar is made of parts. There are strings, a body, a neck, tuning knobs, and so forth. The same could be said about a person. The parts of a person in regard to this argument are mind, body, labor, and soul. We're not talking about fingers, toes, and teeth. The guitar can be disassembled and sold piecemeal. I can remove the strings and sell them. I can then convert the body into a drum, shoot the knobs out of a slingshot, burn the neck to keep warm, and I can do all of this because it is disassemblable. A person is not the same. I cannot separate my mind from my body, or my labor from my mind. I cannot send my labor off to work at the same time my mind is playing video games, at the same time my body is working out so I can get that six-pack I always wanted. A person is not disassemblable. This is the functional claim for wage work, that they are only buying labor. But your labor cannot be separated from you. If your labor is doing something, all of you is doing that something. They are buying you. Having sold yourself, you cannot claim to own yourself. Someone else does. Being owned by someone else is slavery. You are only a part-time slave, only partially owned. This is wage slavery, partial self-ownership. Pick the term you're most comfortable with, or come up with a new one. They all mean the same thing. You do not own yourself. Now my wage work is fraud claim should be clear. It is not possible to buy just labor. You have to buy the whole person. Any claim to buy labor is fraud because it is not removable from the person. You would have to offer to buy the whole person, not just the labor, because it is the whole person you are getting. Any way you slice it, wage work is fraud. Any claim to buy labor is either buying a whole person or buying the product of labor. It cannot be just labor they are buying. Paying for one thing and taking something else is fraud or theft. Fraud may look voluntary on the surface, but it is not. A free person owns the product of their labor. Again, I will say I don't know the solution, but that is the beauty of free markets. Solutions will emerge from the voluntary interactions of people. I'm only identifying where there are not voluntary interactions that allow for this emergent behavior. I want to see a more free and voluntary society. Solving problems like wage slavery will bring us closer to that goal.